simple and composite attributes, right? So what do you mean by simple attributes and composite attributes, right? Simple attributes means attributes that cannot be divisible, right? They are known as simple attributes, whereas attributes that can be further subdivided, they are known as composite attribute, right? So for example, name of a person is a composite attribute which can be further subdivided into first name, middle name, last name. It's an composite attribute, right? So whereas roll number of a student or an author ID of a person is going to be a simple attribute, right? So if an attribute cannot be further divisible, right? It is indivisible. It is known as a simple attribute, whereas composite attribute means it can be divisible, right? So the address attribute of a particular employee can be further subdivided into door number, street name, city, pin code, and so on, right? So if an attribute can be further if an attribute is divisible, right, it is known as composite attribute, whereas if an attribute is indivisible, it is known as simple attribute, right? So again, you have a single valued and multi-valued attributes, right? So for example, contact number of a person is going to be a multi-valued attribute, right? So I may have multiple contact numbers, right? An organization may have some multiple contact numbers. Again, you have multiple email IDs to connect with an person, right? Again, you may have multiple degrees over a period of time. You have different your undergraduate degree may be from engineering background, postgraduate degree may be from some specialization, right? So some attributes, they are going to be multi-valued attributes, whereas some attributes, they are going to be only single valued attributes, right? So for example, name, not name, age of a person is going to be a single valued attribute, right? Age is a single valued attribute, whereas a qualification of a particular person or a contact number of a particular person, right? uh, or email, contact email of a particular person, it's going to be an example for multi-valued attributes, right? Then again, you have different categories of attributes, namely derived attribute as well as stored attribute, right? So for example, you have some attribute like age of a particular student, right? Sorry, you have some attribute like date of birth of a particular student. So based on the date of birth and current date, so we can compute the age attribute of a particular student, right? So the date of birth of a particular student is known as stored attribute of a particular student, whereas the age attribute is going to be the derived attribute of the particular student, right? So one, if an attribute can be derived from the existing base attributes or stored attributes, it's known as derived attributes, right? So for example, an employee is working in an organization. It is possible to it is possible to compute the years of experience of a particular employee, right? So based on the date of joining, right? So every employee has a date of joining value associated with an attribute. So based on the date of joining attribute and current date, today's date, we'll be able to compute the total years of experience of an employee in an organization, right? So here the date of joining attribute is known as the stored attribute, and years of experience is known as the derived attribute, right? And the domain, it is used to specify the set of permitted values for each of the attribute, right? So you can have a glance about the different attributes. Right? So hope you can follow the different types of attributes, right? So attributes are used to describe an entities. So attributes may be simple attributes or composite attributes. So simple attributes, they are indivisible, whereas composite attributes, they can be they are divisible, right? So name of a person can be divided into first name, middle name, last name. Address can be a door number, street name, city, state, postal code, and so on. So if an attribute is divisible, it is known as composite attribute, whereas if an attribute is indivisible, it is known as simple attribute. You can have a single valued versus multi-valued attribute, right? So for a contact number is a multi-valued attribute, right? Whereas age is going to be an example for a single valued attribute. You have stored versus derived attribute, right? So stored versus derived attribute means right, so for any student, right, like we have date of birth attribute, so you can compute the age of a particular student based on the date of birth attribute and the current date. So age is going to be an derived attribute, whereas date of birth is known as base or stored attribute. And the domain, it specifies the set of permitted values for each of the attribute, right? So this is about working with the different types of attributes, right? So we have discussed about entity set, right, a relationship set, and we have discussed about attributes.